In 1942, during the Quit India movement, the British arrested most Congress leaders overnight. But the movement did not die because Aruna Asaf Ali, just 33 years old, stepped forward and hoisted the Indian flag at Gwalior Tank Maidan in Bombay. The British declared her a fugitive. The public called her heroine of 1942. Then there was Matangini Hazra, a 73-year-old widow in Bengal, leading thousands in a march against British rule. She was shot, yet continued wounded, chanting Vande Mataram until she fell. This Independence Day series by ForumIAS doesn't just tell the story of freedom, it remembers the women who brought it. Women's participation in India's freedom story extends far beyond 1857. In 1815, Rani Bhima Bai Holkar led guerrilla warfare against Colonel Malcolm and defeated him. In the 19th century, Rani Chennamma of Kittur and Begum Hazrat Mahal of Awadh resisted the British East India Company with remarkable courage and leadership, decades before official rebellion. The stories remind us that India's struggle had brave women long before the First War of Independence. In 1857, Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi stood as a fearless leader. Dressed as a man, holding the reins of a horse in her mouth, she used the sword with both the hands. She was considered by British as the best and bravest military leader of rebels. Begum Hazrat Mahal seized Lucknow from British control. Even after forced retreat, she refused British amnesty, choosing exile in Nepal, dying in enormity, buried in a nameless grave at Kathmandu's Jama Masjid. Alongside them, women like the Rani of Ramgarh, Rani Jindan Kaur, Baiza Bai Chauhan and Tapaswini Maharani led charges with daring audacity, often unspoken in textbooks but etched in history. During the Swadeshi movement, women in Bengal led by figures like Sarala Devi Chaudrani came out of domestic spaces to picket shops selling British goods, organize boycott campaigns and promote indigenous products. Sarala Devi herself set up women groups to take public vows of Swadeshi, a radical act in early 1900s India. By the time of the non-cooperation movement, their role had expanded. In 1921, thousands of women responded to Gandhi's call to boycott foreign cloth and liquor, joining protests in cities like Bombay, Calcutta and Madras. Kasturba Gandhi, with experience from South Africa, led marches in Gujarat, picketed liquor shops and was jailed for addressing women's gatherings, encouraging them to join non-cooperation. Then came civil disobedience in 1930, where women weren't just supporters, they became organizers. Gandhi tied the Khadi movement directly to women's daily labor, asserting that without their participation, Swadeshi would fail. Women formed their own satyagraha groups. Kamala Nehru led salt satyagraha marches in her husband's absence and was repeatedly arrested. In many provinces, entire protests were run by women, especially when male leaders were in jail. As the 1930s gave way to the 1940s, the freedom struggle became more intense. And so did women's role. Aruna Asaf Ali. In 1942, when the Quit India movement was launched, most senior leaders were arrested within hours. But it was Aruna Asaf Ali, barely 33, who stepped up to hoist Indian flag at Gwalior Tank Maidan in Bombay. She went underground, published an illegal newsletter and coordinated protests, all while being one of India's most wanted women. Usha Mehta. That same year, Usha Mehta, just 22 years old, set up the Congress Radio, an underground radio station that broadcast uncensored news and messages from the movement. Operating in secret, often shifting locations overnight, it was a lifeline of truth in the time of mass censorship until she was eventually caught and tortured by British police. Meanwhile, Durgabai Deshmukh was working across Andhra Pradesh, organizing women satyagrahis, picketing liquor shops and running refugee camps. She later became a Constituent Assembly member, but her activism began with being jailed in her teens for breaking salt laws. While many women joined non-violent methods, others chose a different path, one of direct confrontation, even armed rebellion. Kalpana Dutt was just 20 when she joined the Chittagong Armory raid led by Surya Sen. Disguised as a boy, she carried bombs and weapons, facing British bullets head-on. Preeti Lata Vadedar, Another member of the same group led an attack on Pahartali European Club, which infamously carried the sign, "Dogs and Indians are not allowed." She was injured in the raid and chose to swallow cyanide rather than be captured. In 1932, Beena Das walked into the convocation of Calcutta University and fired a revolver at Governor Stanley Jackson, a dramatic act of protest against British repression. Later, in the 1940s, Captain Lakshmi Sehgal led the Women's Regiment of the Indian National Army, or the INA, called the Rani of Jhansi Regiment. She recruited, trained, and led women soldiers in the INA's military campaign against the British. These were not isolated stories. There were dozens of women across the country who picked up arms, organized underground networks, or risked their lives in revolutionary activities. Names like Nani Bala Devi, who posed as a housewife to shelter revolutionaries, Kalyani Das and Sushila Mitra, who spread nationalist literature under threat of arrest, Leela Nag, Veena Das, Suniti Chaudhary, and Shanti Ghosh, who plotted and attempted assassinations of colonial officials. From Suhasini Ganguly to Ujjwala Majumdar, from Bela Mitra to Shobha Rani Dutt, the list goes on. Urmila Devi Shastri, Rama Devi Chaudhary, Malti Chaudhary, Sophia Khan, and Mahadevi Tai each played a role that history often forgets. But the freedom movement could not have survived without. Even though countless women led from the front, their names rarely shine in the pages of history. And this erasure did not end in 1947. It continues even today. But what also continues is the resolve of women. From paddy fields to parliaments, from courtrooms to classrooms, they are still rising, still leading, and still rewriting the history, one that refuses to be forgotten.